everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Petri Dish. Today, we are hanging out with our new buddies of Cobalt Iron. This is Doug, and we are going to be talking about data protection. Doug, I don't know how you feel about data protection, but I would say right now, we are probably somewhere near like the peak of sort of complexity. We've got, historically, we've had malware and ransomware, but now we've got remote scenarios, we've got enterprise data, we've got data just moving all through the different pipelines, and we figured what better time to talk to Cobalt Iron than right now. So Doug, thanks for joining us. And if I remember correctly, you are based out, you specifically are up in the Jersey area. Does that sound about right?
That is correct. I'm coming to you from beautiful sunny New Jersey. Yes, but Cobalt Iron is headquartered out of Lawrence, Kansas. So happy to be here. Happy to be talking about data protection. It's I can't remember a more relevant time, quite honestly, in our time, or at least my time in IT, that data protection has taken such a forefront in people's minds. So happy to be talking about it, Brad.
Yeah, and thank you for taking time to jump on the call with us. So, before we get into Cobalt and Iron, let's just talk about you for a second, Doug. We talked, previously to this interview, but tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know you've been in the industry for a while. This isn't something you just walked into last weekend, but give us your quick background on what brings you to the data protection industry, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I've actually been in data protection for 22 years now. Started at a partner organization. We were actually doing some of the largest implementations of ArcServe, believe it or not. And then I spent 19 years at Cobalt. So, pretty much did everything there, all the way from running their support organization to running their pre-sales organization and even some marketing. But what I found and what led me to Cobalt Iron is that in all of my conversations with customers in the recent years, they were all dealing with the same challenges. They were looking at data protection as being an onerous thing to manage, that they had all of these loosely connected programs and applications that they were using for data protection, some of them homegrown, some of them purchased. But the reality is that they were adding complexity by trying to address complexity, or addressing complexity by adding complexity, maybe a better way to put it. And that's what attracted me to Cobalt Iron, is that I think fundamentally data protection needs to change, and that people need to consume it a little bit differently. And again, Cobalt Iron being really the only true enterprise class data protection solution delivered as a service, I think we're very uniquely positioned in the market today.
Well, why don't we just dive into that? Because I think that's a pretty bold claim. I'm not an industry expert by any means, but what do you mean by as a service, and how does Cobalt Iron approach that model?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that we spend a lot of time with our customers with and our prospects with. Most data protection solutions today are essentially loosely cobbled together or loosely threaded together technologies that include storage, compute, a program or an application to do data protection, maybe scripts. Again, all of these things that are kind of loosely threaded together, but really there's no cohesivity between any of them. And so what they tend to be managing is not necessarily a single data protection operation or a single data protection platform, but a lot of these data protection platforms and storage and so forth. And so what happens is not only do you have a very expensive solution because you've got separate maintenance streams, you've got separate things that you need to purchase, capital expenses and whatnot to be able to support that, but you also introduce a ton of risk. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of organizations look to as a service delivery of data protection as something that's very interesting to them. Because now, again, with where we're at today, with the risk of various threats that are targeting data and even data protection solutions, they want to be insulated from that. And really, the as a service delivery of data protection is the best way to do that.
Interesting. I mean, data protection is one of those things that you need. We hear too often that, hey, it's not always thought about on the forefront. Always, it's just sort of like a bucket you dump money into. But then you run into these situations where a company like Garmin had their whole entire operations just frozen, and because they didn't have adequate data protection, the rumor on the street is that they ended up just paying the ransom to get their data back up and running. But I'm curious, as we are now in more of a distributed world, I think you're in New Jersey, and I know your company's not based there. I'm not in a corporate office, and probably many people listening to this are not in a corporate office. How does your solution work with, say, like data that is now just sort of outside the firewall, if you will?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Well, when you look at our basic architecture, it's extremely flexible. So I like to compare or describe our solution as a cloud delivery of data protection that can be aligned to either on-prem, hybrid, or completely cloud-based solutions. So, again, when you look at how we can deploy in any of those models, we can create a solution and architecture that can support any workload, regardless of where it is, whether that's cloud-based, whether it's remote office, whether it's replication between offices, whether it's in a data center. So, again, our solution, Cobalt Iron, the way that it's designed is to really be able to support the data regardless of where it's at, whether it's on premises, cloud, or anywhere in between.
Gotcha. And how do you accomplish that? Is it through agents on the local device, or do you have a central store, or how does that approach work?
Yeah, it's going to be different for every customer, but essentially we are agent-based protection. So depending upon the workload and whether it's virtual, physical, so forth and so on, there might be agents deployed. But what we do is we automate all the deployments to agents so that it's not that onerous task of making sure you have an agent on your client. For virtual workloads, it's even easier. We integrate at an API level with the hypervisor. So, again, you get that, that guaranteed protection, regardless of whether you have an agent or not in the guest operating system. So, again, we're a very modern solution. So depending upon the workload, again, whether it's physical, virtual, database, application, so forth and so on, that the protection methodology might change a little bit. But really what it's all about is a single solution that ensures that you're protected regardless of what your workload is.
And so then based on that, what does it look like from the IT pro perspective, right? You're the IT admin, you've deployed Cobalt Iron, you've got your endpoints backed up and secured. How am I as an IT pro managing this process, managing the timing, managing the data? Like what sort of information comes up to me to help me make more informed decisions?
Yeah. So maybe I can position or slightly pivot on that if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the way that people typically do that today is they have media servers and master servers and storage targets that they use for repositories, and maybe they have cloud object storage or, so forth and so on, all these various things. And then, to be able to, and that's just the infrastructure to be able to support, those data protection operations across the workloads. And so, a typical routine of someone who's in charge of data protection is making sure those systems are patched, making sure that your jobs have run, making sure that any anomalies, within the environment or any exceptions in that environment, they kind of weed through, the noise to get to those exceptions so that they know what to work on. And so it's a full-time job in managing data protection operations. Well, we don't really subscribe to that. What we say is, hey, let us take care of infrastructure. Let us take care of the things that, are noise. Let us ensure that your operations, your infrastructure, and the landscape of data protection is 100% optimized. And then once you do, what you're really worrying about is, hey, are my jobs successful? And if not, maybe I have to deal with one or two failures, in the environment. But the reality is with this as a service delivery of our solution, we're looking at a lot of those things as well. We're looking at things that might cause problems downstream, that might cause failures in your environment, and we're proactively remediating those. So when you look at the job of a Cobalt Iron administrator versus the job of a typical backup administrator, although they have similar job titles and functions, the job of a Cobalt Iron administrator is probably somewhere in the terms of 80% to 90% less, at least in time focused on data protection operations.
And time is money. So,
Absolutely.
that's a good way to get some of your time back. So pivoting just slightly. So backing up is awesome, but recovering is a quintessential part of that process. Can you talk about, if I could talk, can you talk a little bit about the recovery process, about let's say anything from a file restore, or you have an outage and you need to bring content back online? What does that process look like?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a simplified operation. What we like to do is ensure that the owners of the data have access so that they can do recoveries of their workloads that they're responsible for. And what I've seen in my 20 years or 20 plus years in the data protection industry is, unfortunately, I don't think I don't think that the level of attention has been paid on the damage that can be done by giving people access to do recoveries when they really shouldn't.
Hmm.
Or they really don't understand that, the data that they're looking to recover. And so that's really where, we have a very, very mature offering, and that, we can create role-based access so that, the owners of the data that are responsible for the data can do recoveries and do it simply. And then have options to be able to do those recoveries that align to what recovery types they're looking to do. So, again, for virtual environments, those recovery needs might be different. Maybe they want to do file level. Maybe they just want to spin up the virtual machine to make sure that it's intact. Or maybe they want to do a live recovery whereby as the machine is restoring, they still have access to that virtual machine. For database administrators, recovery might look completely different, where, hey, I'm using RMAN scripts to be able to recover my data, but I still want to be able to use a single solution to be able to show that, auditability of, backups and success of those backups for compliance reasons. So, and again, I think when you look at a solution that can span the workloads that we do, but provide role-based access control to enable those responsible for their data to be able to recover their data in a responsible way, it's a pretty powerful story.
Interesting. I have one question that I always ask everybody who comes on and talks about backup and recovery, and just data retention and all that. And I'm very curious on your opinion on tape. So some people will say that tape is absolutely never coming back. Other people will say it's the gospel. How do you feel about using tape as a backup recovery medium?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's unfortunately it depends, right? Because there's some organizations that depend that are completely they have mandates, they have compliance and regulations that will require them to keep some type of tape medium in their environment for eternity. And whereas, cloud, can be a good solution for long-term recovery or long-term retention capabilities, a lot of organizations don't look at that as being an economical, way of tape replacement. So, I kind of go, both ways. If an organization has those mandates and has those requirements, then a lot of times there is no other option. But, for the most part, when you talk about modernization, to me, modernization means being responsible with retention and creating rules that that you abide by, and with that comes an endpoint to retention. And so I kind of take that mindset, where I think if we created rules around how long data needs to be kept for, and that we choose an appropriate medium for that, a lot of times it doesn't need to be tape.
It's a good politically correct answer. I'll give you that one. It's right. It's the perfect answer, not answer, but it makes sense. Like, you justified it and you backed it up. I'm not gonna harp on you too much, just because there's some very decisive people who are like, never put things on tape, but it certainly has its value in certain scenarios. So I do agree with you on that regard.
What I would say is, let me take a slightly different approach on it, if you don't mind. And that is that, when you look at the Cobalt Iron solution, we are all about modernization.
Sure.
And so with modernization, typically comes the conversation of, hey, we can help you go tapeless. And by the way, we can do it, and we can ensure that your data is recoverable, on a disk-based medium. Mm-hmm. So, again, that is, really our positioning. But what I would say is that there are a lot of solutions out there that don't have support of tape. Or, if they do support it, it's again kind of that, third-party tool that is going to enable them to dump to tape. And that's not our reality. Whereas we will talk to our customers about, modernization means going tapeless. If there's a requirement, we can support it. We can support it natively.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. All right. That is an appropriate one. Okay. Next question for you. So let's say somebody listens to this and you're like, all right, I'm going to deploy Cobalt Iron tomorrow. What is that onboarding process? Like, how do you go from a potential client to a robust backup solution? Can you walk me through that journey?
Yeah, and that's another one where I'll give you my experience in the past. Typically that's weeks and weeks and weeks of preparation, and it's having somebody on site to do the deployment of the master servers and the media servers, and network configurations and sizing and all of these other things. It's usually a pretty complex situation and scenario that you have to go through. What I'd say about Cobalt Iron is it is fundamentally different in that sense, in that we try to understand a lot of that front end information. So we are doing discovery. We are understanding, what workloads you're trying to protect, what retentions, you need to, set up in terms of policies, schedules, all that. But when we, provide our solution to you, again, it's typically in a private cloud format where we deliver what we call an accelerator to you. It's already pre-configured.
Gotcha.
So we take all that information about your environment, which, by the way, we can collect from certain data protection solutions as well, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we, use all that information to pre-configure a solution that's delivered to our customer. They plug it in to network, they plug it into power, and essentially it's a matter of deploying, unattended installs or scripted installs on clients that need agents, and you're already up and running. So there's no policy creation afterwards. There's no, setting up schedules afterwards. All that's done on the front end, so that when you look to implement our solution or deploy our solution, it's 90% of the work is already done before you even get the solution or get the accelerator on site.
Gotcha. And then the last question I always have to ask is how does, what's the licensing model? How does a company's going to deploy this and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's this going to cost? Like, I don't need exact figures, but is it based on per user? Is it based on per device? How does the product get licensed?
Yeah, no, it's based upon consumption and it's subscription. So we look at, that's one of the things that we do in the discovery process is we try to understand what your usage is today, what your growth rates are over the term of the subscription, and then we size it appropriately to ensure that, again, the consumption is going to align to that. And so, again, it's a very, very, easy to understand model. We have reports that'll tell you exactly where you are in terms of alignment with your subscribe to consumption. But I guess another point that I should make is it is based upon post-compressed, post-deduplicated data. Okay. And so it's really the most efficient way of subscription licensing, so that you're only paying for what you're using.
Gotcha. No, that is good to know. And if people want to learn more about you, Doug, or anything else you have, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, LinkedIn is always a great way to connect with me, and obviously follow me, follow Cobalt Iron. We are very active on social media, so obviously, we want to talk to prospects, we want to talk to customers, we want to answer their problems, we want to fix their problems, and so that's something that I would encourage everybody to actively follow us. Also, our website has a plethora of information, cobaltiron.com. It's got videos, it's got white papers, solution briefs, everything. So again, please follow Cobalt Iron, visit the website, follow me. We'll obviously answer any questions the best we can.
Yep. And for people looking for those links, because you don't feel like searching around, you'll find them down in the description below on the post over on Petri.com. But Doug, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, talking about Cobalt Iron, giving us some tidbits on your tape and your backup and, just thoughts in the industry. To everybody else, thanks for tuning in this time. We'll catch all of you right back here next time.